Good afternoon, and welcome to the Franchise Missionary Baptist Church, located at 1000 Dillingham Street in Phoenix City, Alabama, where Dr. Raymond Cochran is our pastor. Thank you for joining us for our midweek Bible study. I'm Minister Ann Taylor Phillips, and I am teaching the lesson for Pastor Cochran today. He is attending the Alabama Missionary State Convention in Birmingham. Our weekly schedule is as follows. Sunday school at 9 o'clock a.m., worship at 9:45 a.m. First Sunday evening worship and the Lord's Supper at 6 o'clock p.m. Monday after the second and third Sundays, Women's Mission Union at 6 o'clock p.m. You may join by calling 351-888-6301. Wednesday, Bible study at 12 p.m., prayer meeting at 6 p.m. Today, we will continue our study of David and Saul in 1 Samuel. Last week, we ended with chapter 19, verses 1 through 8. Saul is filled with an evil spirit that grows from jealousy to hate to murder. He asked his son Jonathan, as well as his servants, to seek out David and to kill him. Saul himself even attempted to kill David in chapter 18, but was unsuccessful. Because David did not retaliate against him and continued to carry himself in an upright manner, Saul became even angrier and more determined to get rid of David before he could become king. Of course, the Lord had already taken his hand off Saul as king of Israel. In chapter 19, verses 1 through 8, we find Saul asking his son Jonathan, as well as his servants, to kill David. But Jonathan had become very close with David. They were good friends, and they had established a deep relationship and cared and wanted to protect one another. And so we find Jonathan asking his father why he would want to kill him. And he reminded him of all the good things David had done for the kingdom, going all the way back to when he slayed Goliath. He said, David risked his own life by going up against that giant, but he stood his ground and he killed him, and it was all for the glory of Israel and for our God. He also reminded him that David constantly went into battle, and each time he went into battle, he was successful. And again, that brought the glory back to Saul and to Israel. And so he asked him, don't be wroth against him. Don't be angry against him. Don't try and kill him. He said, because you'll be going after him for no reason. There's no cause for you to want to kill David. He hasn't done anything. He said everything that he has done towards you has been for your good and for the good of the kingdom. And so by the time we are at the end of chapter 19, verses 1 through 8, of course, Saul tells Jonathan that he is not going to do anything to David. He's not going to kill him. He's not going to order anyone else to kill him. He's going to continue to support David and to allow him to come in and play the instrument to keep him calm, and he was not going to do anything against him. Of course, by the end of verse 8, we find that there was another war, and of course, Saul goes ahead and he sends David out to fight that war, and he leads about 1,000 men into battle, and he is successful in that war as well. Now we're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 1 through 11. verses 9 through 11. Verse 9, and the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David, even to the wall with the javelin. But he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin to the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. In this slide, you can see where Saul takes his javelin and throws it towards David in an attempt to kill him, but again, he is unsuccessful. Now, this is after Saul had made a commitment to his son Jonathan that he would not cause any harm to come to David. But of course, we see he wasn't being honorable. He wasn't being honest. He still fully intended to kill David. One thing that we'll notice is that every time war breaks out again, he sends David into battle. And that is pretty much with the hope and desire that David will actually be killed during the battle. And of course, God does not suffer that to happen. He has chosen David as the next king of Israel. And so we find that Saul has sent his men out to David's house. David is actually married to Saul's daughter. Michal is Saul's daughter. And of course, we find that Saul has tried to get his son Jonathan to kill David. And now he sent men out to his daughter's home in an effort to kill David. But God would not have that to be so. Notice that these two people are Saul's only children. They're his children. They're his own children. And even though he thinks that they will stand with him against David, they do not. They continue to support David. And so Michal knows that these men have been sent by her father to kill David. And she warns him that if he stays in that house, he is surely going to be dead before the next day. And so she is going to lower him down. There's a picture that shows that, beginning with verse 12. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, he is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed, with a pillow of goat's hair for bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, why hast thou so deceived me, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, he said unto me, let me go. Why should I kill thee? So David fled and escaped, and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. So, when you think about Michal letting David down, you're reminded of the city of Jericho. And if you think about it, you remember that the spies that had gone out, they were also what? Let down. Rahab saved them by letting them down from the roof so that they could not be captured and killed in Jericho. And so we have that reminder there. We also can think about Paul in Damascus. He was also hidden. The Lord has a way of protecting his own. He's going to make sure that they are safe. And you know what? God protects us too. He has a mighty awesome way I like to think that he has a way that is mighty sweet. And no matter what we do and how we are wrong, he protects us and he cares for us because he is a forgiving God. He tells us that he will cast our sins as far as the east is from the west. He is faithful. Unlike Saul, he keeps his word. He does exactly what he tells us he is going to do. And we can be thankful for that. And so Michelle takes, it says that she takes an image. And of course, an image is like a lowercase God, okay, and a smaller piece. And she places it in David's bed. And then she puts some goat's hair on it and she covers it up. And when the messengers come in, the servants come in to kill David, she says, he's sick. He's in the bed. He's not well. And so, of course, the servants go back. What do? They tell Saul, we couldn't get to him because he's sick. Your daughter, his wife, said he's sick. And Saul becomes so angry because he is so determined. He is adamant that he is going to kill David, that he sends them back. He says, I tell you what you do. You bring me and his bed. Just pick up the whole bed and bring all of it to me because I'm going to kill him. That is my intent. I am determined. Bring David in his sick bed to me. I'm not going to wait for sickness to kill him. I'm going to go ahead and take him out myself. Okay? So then the servants go back. The messengers go back. And when they go back and they go in and say, well, Saul says we have to bring him in his sick bed back to him. And she takes him in, and when they see what's going on, they uncover the quote-unquote body, and they find that it's not a body at all. David is not there. He's nowhere near there. And so they realize that they have been fooled, that they have been duped. Of course, they got to go back and take that message to Saul. And that doesn't make them very comfortable either, does it? Of course not, because they were supposed to have taken David out. They were supposed to have killed him when they went the first time. Okay? And so we find that David has escaped and he has gone to Samuel. Now, Samuel, of course, is the spiritual leader at this time. And David felt as though he would be safe if he went to Saul, that he would be protected from Saul if he had gone to Samuel. Okay? And so he fled and escaped to Ramah. And he went with Samuel up to Naioth. And of course, Naioth is a spiritual place of training where the prophets go. They worship the Lord. Samuel would teach them in that area. And so they went ahead there, and David went with Samuel, and he was able to be with Samuel while he was teaching the other prophets, the younger prophets. Verse 19, and it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And so what has happened is, there are people all over looking for David. There are spies who are, seeking him out. And when they realize that he had gone with Samuel into Naioth, they go back and they tell Saul, okay, we know where he is, but we want you to know that where he is a spiritual place. Okay, he is with Samuel in Naioth in Ramah. Verse 20. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And so here they are. They think they're going to take David and to kill David and to do Saul's bidding. But when they get to this spiritual place, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon them, and they also begin praising and prophesying unto the Lord. And they're unable to complete the mission. They cannot bring themselves to try to kill David because the Lord is with him, and the Lord has covered them, and they just simply cannot do it. And then verse 21, and when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. So what we have happening here is we see Saul so determined, so adamant that he is going to kill David, that he sends 3 different sets of messengers, 3 different sets of servants to go and track down David and kill him. But look at God. Each time they tried to go and kill David, they were unsuccessful because the Holy Spirit came upon them, and the Lord caused them to praise him and to prophesy according to his will and his way. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. Can you imagine what Samuel felt like? Okay, he keeps sending people to do his bidding, and what's happening? They're not getting the job done. They're not taking care of the business that he sent them to take care of. And he becomes even more angry. Now, or even angrier. And you think about what happens when we allow ourselves to become jealous. You remember earlier in our study, when David came back, the people would say, Saul has his 1,000, but David has his 10,000. In other words, Saul is great, but David is greater. And that causes Saul to become angry. It infuriates him because he thinks that the people are going to care more for David than they care for him. They're going to love David more than they love him. They're going to respect David more than they respect him. And that is exactly what happened. But the Lord has taken his hand off of Saul because of his disobedience. And he has already had Samuel to anoint David as the new king. And even though he has not taken the throne yet, he has not taken his position yet, he is still God's chosen king. And God is not going to allow anything to happen to his chosen people. So no matter what Saul tried to do in order to get rid of David, it doesn't work out. Look, his own children are standing up against him, against Saul, in protection of David. His own children. You know, he tells Jonathan, if we don't get rid of him, he's going to have the kingdom and you won't have it. You will have nothing to inherit. But Jonathan doesn't want to inherit the kingdom, does he? Because he loves David and he wants David to live and to prosper, to be successful. And so Saul decides then, now wait a minute, we got a big problem here. And so he decides then that he himself is going to go and he is going to seek out David and handle the business himself. So it's very, very important for us to understand that jealousy can create a multitude of problems, can't it? So it goes from being jealous, it moves straight to hatred. Saul now hates David. He hates him with a passion. And because of his hatred towards David, he now wants to murder him. He now wants to murder him. because he is so envious of him. And so we have to be mindful as Christians. We got to be careful of how we feel towards other people. We don't need to become jealous of others. You know, what God has for you is just for you. You don't have to be envious of anything he does in someone else's life, because he has great things to be done in your life and for your life as well. So just be mindful of that. Be careful that you don't allow yourself to get caught up in that, because it can magnify. It can become so great that you may not kill a person physically, but you can kill them spiritually. You can murder their good name and character by spreading rumors that you know are lies, that are not true, and causes them to be looked down upon in the community. So we have to be very careful. God does not want us to be envious or jealous of anyone. And he tells us that we should not kill. Okay? And that's not just a physical murder, because we can kill spiritually, and we can kill emotionally, and we can kill financially. There's so many ways that we can murder someone. Okay? And we know that even though Saul wanted David to be killed physically, it was for Saul's own personal, emotional gains that he wanted David to be killed. He wanted to make sure that he could remain king. But what he didn't realize, what he didn't think about, is that God is in control. He is in charge. And yeah, you may kill David, but that doesn't mean that you're going to still be what? My chosen king for my people. And remember now, the people asked for a king. God himself was their what? Their king. But they asked for an earthly king. They wanted someone that they could see, that they could honor, that sat on a throne like in the other countries. They wanted to be like the other folk. And so they asked for a king. And God gave them Saul. But Saul did not continue in the way that God would have him to go and rule over his people. Okay? So we need to be mindful then of how we allow ourselves to get caught up and not want to be kind to other people. All right. Chapter 19, verses 22 through 24. Then went he also to Ramah, and that is Saul, that's the he that's referenced there, and came to a great well that is in Sechu. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they be at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? Look at what happens here. Saul says, I got this under control. I'm going to go and seek him out for myself. And so what he does is he asks for direction. Where is Samuel and David? I need to get to where they are. I need to see them. And he's told that they are in Naioth, in Ramah. And remember, that's a spiritual place, okay? A holy place of teaching. And he says, all right, I'm going right there myself. But take a look at what happens to Samuel and David. They stay there praising and worshiping, and then Saul does what? He is filled with the Spirit of God as well, isn't he? And what does he do? He begins prophesying. He begins praising God. And to the point where when he got to that place of worship, he himself took off his armor and his royal garments. He made himself little, didn't he? He was no longer the king. He kneeled down and prayed and honored and prophesied the Lord. That wasn't what he went to do, was it? He was going for murder. He had some evil doings, an evil plan in his heart. But when he got there, he could no longer carry out his plan. And so he takes off all that is important to him, all that establishes him as the king. He strips all of that off. He strips it off. And of course, that really shows God's rejection of him too, doesn't it? Because the Lord has already rejected him as the king of Israel. And when he strips himself, then he praises the Lord. He stays there all day and all night, okay, prophesying and worshiping the Lord. Nothing he could do. None of his plans could come out the way he wanted them to. And so when he does this, and he's prophesying as though he is one of the prophets himself, the people say, oh, wait a minute. What's going on here? Is Saul among the prophets? What has happened? What has happened? Because everyone knows that he is trying to what? Kill David. But yet and still, he doesn't carry through. He doesn't follow through with that. And he finds himself prophesying and praising God as well. Okay? And that takes us through chapter 19. Now, we're going to go ahead and look at just the first 3 verses of chapter 20. And then that will finish us for today. I think I'm on the right time. Okay? All right. So 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 1, 2, and 3. In chapter 20, what happens now is David seeks out Jonathan, and he tells Jonathan all the things that Saul has tried to do to him, all the ways Saul has attempted to kill him or to have him killed, to have him slain. And of course, we find that Jonathan doesn't believe this, because what did Saul promise Jonathan? In chapter 19, verses 1 through 8. He promises Jonathan that he what? He will not harm David. He promises Jonathan that he's not going to kill David, and he's not going to allow anyone else to kill him. But we find, as we continue in chapter 19, that Saul is not being honest, is he? And so he has attempted to kill David. David escaped his javelin. Then he sent people out to kill, his messengers, his servants out to kill David in his home. That didn't happen. He sent his servants, his messengers, to Naioth in Ramah to seek out David and to kill him. Remember, he sent 3 different groups, and each one failed, because instead of murdering David, they prophesied and praised the Lord, totally against what Saul had intended. And then Saul says, what? I'll go and kill him myself. I got this. And of course, he fails in his attempt as well. So of course, David is still alive, but he's telling Jonathan what his father has attempted to do to him. And Jonathan does not believe David. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 1. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is mine iniquity? And what is my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life? And he said unto him, God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my Father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will show it me. And why should my Father hide this thing from me? It is not so. Jonathan saying, well, my dad already made a promise to me that you would live, that he would cause no harm to come to you. And I think that if he had planned to do something against you, that he would have talked with me about it first. I believe he would have shared that with me. He says, I don't believe this. In verse 3, and David sware moreover and said, thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth. He's saying, as sure as that is, he said, there is but a step between me and death. David said, he's after me. He's determined to kill me. And he doesn't want to tell you, because remember before, when he told Jonathan that David had to die, Jonathan said, but David's a good man. He's a good warrior. He honors you. He respects you. He protects you. He wouldn't do anything against you. And of course, Saul says, well, no, he wouldn't. I agree with you. I won't let anything happen to him, but just the opposite. And so here Jonathan is thinking, David, why are you telling me this about my father? He told me that no harm would come to you. So then why are you telling me that he is trying to kill you or he's trying to have you killed? And so David will go on in chapter 20, and we'll pick that up next week when Pastor Cochran is back and see what goes on there. But we do know the end of the story, don't we? David does survive, okay? But we'll go ahead and continue looking at 1 Samuel, and we'll pick up with chapter 20, verse 4 next Wednesday. We thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being a part of our midweek Bible study. And we invite you again to worship with us on Sunday morning, beginning with Sunday school. God bless you. Thank you.